Inspired by a gag post that I didn't initially realize was a gag, Kumar and I present a long-delayed discussion of Kentaro Miura's Berserk, focusing on the first 4 volumes. It's a dark fantasy manga with a lot of gore and supernatural shenanigans, and additionally, a lot of elements that are recognizable from other manga or movies, but then begins an extended flashback sequence that focuses on interpersonal drama and reveals that this comic is really a graphic medicine story about trauma. Miura died before he could finish the comic. Who will, or won't, potentially finish the story? First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. This is Tim.
And this is Kumar.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Kumar in Melbourne. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Okay, so our inspiration for this episode, so we thought we'd talk, Berserk, manga Berserk.
We've been talking about doing it for a long time, especially since
Kentaro Miura,
especially since he died 2 years ago. I was like, oh, maybe we should get around to doing this now.
Yeah,
it's been around.
Lingering on the list since then, at least.
Yeah, because it's like super popular. Like, it's been around since 1990. English version, I think, started in 2003. But still, that's like, it's 30 years it's been going. So it's always been like, what is this thing? I never read it. Only ever saw, like, cover images of it. Thought it was some sort of, I don't know, medieval barbarian thing or whatever. Never really paid attention, but I thought it was popular. I should look at it at some stage. So we've always been talking about doing it.
Yeah.
Especially after he died a couple of years ago. And
then Kumar sent this article, which I and some other people on our Facebook group took seriously at first. And I was starting to think, was this an April Fool joke? But it came out on March 22nd. And so tell what the article said.
So it just says that it's a headline. It's from the Hard Times, which is an all-parody site like The Onion. And the headline was, Bill Watterson to come out of retirement to complete Berserk. And it's just one of the things that I thought was just really obviously, I just laughed so hard when I saw it. It just seemed like the most obvious joke. But for some people, it was like, wow. As if, I don't understand how you could go from Calvin Hobbes to Berserk, why an American artist would be doing it. There was in no contextual way to make any sense. But there you go. But that was inspiration enough to be like, okay, now it's time to do Berserk for real.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I took it seriously at first, and then I was increasingly doubting it because I knew that Miura's friend Kouji Mori had been doing some additional chapters after Miura died.
Yeah, is he like his childhood friend?
Yeah, they were childhood friends, and in fact,
but is he a manga professional at all?
Yeah, I guess he is. Yes,
okay.
I guess he's done his own work, and yeah, they knew each other like in high school, and in fact, according to Wikipedia, the relationship in the comic between Guts and Griffith was partially based on Miura's friendship with Morty in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay, I have a lot of questions about that. A lot of questions.
And Morty is supposedly the only person who has any idea what Miura had planned for the end of the strip.
Okay.
And so I was like, why on earth would you bring in somebody else, let alone Bill Watterson?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is not news. That is a joke.
It's a joke. But actually, the closest thing I can almost think of, but was real, was the Syndicate getting Al Plastino to draw Peanuts in case Charles Schultz retired or quit. And that, to me, Plastino was able to kind of mimic Schultz's style a little bit, but I'm like, this guy he drew Silver Age Superman comics under Mort Weisinger. Like, this is the guy, and you can see those strips online, and they're most dreadful, awful things. But if somebody had told me Al Plastino's thing over Peanuts, I'd be like, haha, April Fools. But that was real. But in this case, I was like, no way. But anyway.
Okay.
Let's get on to Berserk.
Right. So, what is Berserk? So, it's takes place in a world that's based on medieval Europe. There are knights in shining armor and so forth. I didn't know this was a genre, but dark fantasy.
Yes.
So fantasy with lots of blood and
Tolkien,
gore.
but gore and dark themes, I guess.
Mm-hmm. People getting dismembered, decapitated, cut in half. I mean, the armor is not very useful to them because the sword still cuts right through them.
Armor is useless. And also, I don't think medieval knights actually went into combat in full plate mail armor. I think that's like a jousting thing. I don't think you would raid a castle wearing that kind of gear.
Probably not.
So it's already kind of ridiculous in itself. And then it doesn't matter, because Guts, our hero, is able to just slash through them anyway. Or maybe that's an indication of his power. But, jumping ahead, the thing I liked about the armor was it looks really solid and heavy. When somebody hits a wall, he draws it in such an amazing... There's such a sense of weight to these things. And when the wall crumbles and there's so much detail and you really feel how heavy this... when a 300-pound guy comes out wearing 200 pounds of armor, you can really feel it on the page. It was really remarkable. But yeah, it starts out as... But also dark fantasy, because we haven't mentioned, there's supernatural elements from page 1.
Yeah.
There's weird creatures and these kind of demonic mutants and this elf creature right out of the gate. But interestingly, there's a shift in, volumes 3 and 4, which is as far as I read. And then there's no supernatural elements. For 2 volumes.
Well, so our plan was we were going to talk about the first 4 volumes, and I got to the end of 4, and I'm like, I'm supposed to talk about it cutting off here? So so I read 5 and 6, and there was some supernatural stuff in 5 and 6.
Coming back, yeah.
But
of course it would come back, yeah.
It was puzzling because, so what we've got set up is the present, quote unquote, as far as the characters are concerned. So... yeah, Guts, which, by the way, I should say, having a character called Guts is the most 20th century Japanese thing ever.
Yes, but I will say it is, yes, and there's another, so... There
was a pro wrestler called Guts, right? In Japan.
I don't know. In Japan, it's quite possible. It's a phrase they use. They use the English word guts. As we would use it for show some guts or whatever.
Well, and as I understand, the idea of the guts pose is from the wrestler, because that wrestler Guts, whatever his last name was, would pose that way, and so. But then it kind of pops up everywhere. Yes. Well, then when I was reading this, I was like, and then these 5 demonic entities show up called the God Hand, and one of them is called Griffith. And my immediate reaction was, what a dumb name for a multidimensional entity from another universe, from another dimension. This thing is called Griffith, and I thought, it's just a Japanese creator using an English name. It doesn't really get if it has weight or not. It just maybe does in Japanese a little bit. But actually, then when we get to the shift to the flashbacks, actually it makes sense. You can, or there is a depth to it. He creates a depth to that name Griffith, so that looking back and seeing that demon thing was called Griffith, it actually was fine. It the first time through, I was like, what a stupid name for this thing that's come from another planet, essentially. But then I was like, okay, this is actually turning into something meaningful, deeply meaningful. Yeah, well, I mean, in that scene in Volume 3, Puck, the elf of indeterminate gender, says, what happened between these two? Because they seem to have these really deep hurt feelings toward each other. It's like something's gone down with them in the past. It's not like it's the first time they've ever met. Although, when I got into the flashback stuff, and the flashback stuff lasts a long time. I looked it up on Wikipedia. Apparently, it goes to about volume 14 before they get back to the quote-unquote present. And I mean, that's not a flashback. That's several prequels. Well, I would... Okay, so I'm also going to say... I'm jumping all over the place here, but, I mean, the book starts in medias res. So it starts with Guts having sex with this woman, and the woman then turns into a monster, which is ripped off straight out of the first Conan the Barbarian movie. And I'm going to say the first 2 volumes of this, everything was ripped off from somewhere else. But
where was it? Oh yeah, then we get to the flashback, and then you. Okay, so you see him. You see this baby. The baby gets picked up, and then we learn that it's Guts. And then you get a title card that says 3 years later. And then we get some scenes, and then we get a title card that says 3 years later again. Then another title. Then we get another bunch of chapters and and it was so fast and almost literally breathtaking. I was like, it was racing at such a speed that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe all this stuff is happening, and we're getting all this backstory all at once. It was such a rush, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the pace at which it was going. But now that you're telling me that's going to go for 14 chapters, I'm a bit like, or 14 volumes, I'm a bit like, well, I guess it kind of slows down at a point.
Yeah, well, getting into reading 5 and 6, I was like, the pace this is going, they're not going to get back to the present anytime soon.
Right.
Because we're not even close to figuring out how Griffith ended up in the God Hand.
Yes, right. Okay, yeah.
Because I'm assuming that's what the flashback is going to tell us.
Yeah.
I got a few spoilers from Wikipedia that I'm not going to talk about, but
okay.
Well, okay. So let's talk about those first 2.5 volumes.
Sure. Yeah.
So Guts is a mercenary. He's known as the Black Swordsman. That bit with having sex with a woman who turns into a monster, I didn't know that was ripped off, but I couldn't fit it together with anything else in the comic.
No, yeah, that's right. So I think he's still kind of finding his feet. I think Miura's finding his feet in terms of story, because especially, and also I find there's a pattern with a lot of long-running manga where you get really 2 or 3 volumes of table setting before you get into here's our main villain. And I remember I was reading like volume 1, and then I went onto Wikipedia for some reason, and it said it's about a swordsman named Guts and his like enemy Griffith. I'm like, well, who's this Griffith guy?
Yeah,
I've been through a whole volume, and it's sometimes it takes a while before the manga will let you know what it's really about. So first,
Full Metal Alchemist is the same.
Right.
First volume just seems like some nice episodic tales. And
yes, that's right. They all start really episodic. Like, here, we're going to go from town to town. We're going to fight these so-called apostles. He doesn't tell us what the apostles are yet. And he goes from town to town. He fights one after the next. It's like, okay, this is going to be it for... But no, there's always at some point, manga will settle in and say, okay, here's what the main overarching story is going to be about. It's going to be this battle. This is the end point, is going to be fighting this person or whatever. Yeah. So so that first scene where he's having sex with that woman, who then turns and then she's like, I've trapped you. And he's like, no, I've trapped you. And then he kills this weird gross out monster that looks like it's from John Carpenter's The Thing, or there's a lot of Akira ripoffs in here too, where like there's this one night in particular turns into this big like squirmy melty monster thing that looks like it's Tetsuo in Akira, really. But anyway, yeah, so I think that scene is like, well, why would Guts be having sex with that woman to turn her into a monster? Like, that's not how he operates at any other time.
Right. Well, and repeatedly he's telling people to never touch him.
Well,
yes. Having sex involves touching, obviously. So
yeah, and actually, so I'm gonna. Spoiler, I love this. I absolutely love this comic. When he's those first bunch of volumes, time anyone touches him, he's like, don't touch me, and he flicks their arms away. Now, he's also like, I don't care about other people. He's always out for himself. At one point, this guy who had helped him, Vargas, is going to be executed, and he doesn't help. He could save him from execution. He doesn't save him from execution.
Well, he sees that it's a trap. He's going to get jumped if he tries to help.
But he's always out for himself. So when he flicks people's arms away, it just seems like it's him being a tough guy. Because initially coming into this with the level of freakish violence, I was like, and the lone wanderer, I was like, oh, this is a bit like Fist of the North Star. But Kenshiro is kind of a noble character. He wouldn't be like, oh, I don't care about other people. Kenshiro would save other people, save an innocent person in trouble. Guts doesn't care. And I kind of dismissed it. He's flicking these people's arms. Anytime anyone touches him, like, keep your hands off me. Don't touch me. And you're like, okay, whatever. He's a tough guy. But then you learn in volume 3 and 4, there's an absolutely heartbreaking reason he doesn't want people touching him. And it's really sad and grim. I mean, the series, when it goes flashback, takes such a turn, such a strange turn, but I was still there for it. I liked the weird demon fighting stuff for 2 volumes, and it changed into this, like, almost pure war story about this guy that's totally shaped by constant war and violation, and I was still there for it. I was like, okay, this is great. Keep going. But yeah, so... Oh, how did we get onto the don't touch me stuff? I can't remember.
Well, because
the sex
contrast
yes,
with the sex.
That's right.
Yeah.
Does make sense. Yeah, I don't think he would... I don't know. Maybe we'll get into his sex life a bit later on, in later volumes. Maybe he doesn't have an issue with having sex with women.
But I was going to say, this Puck... elf who looks more like a fairy than an elf tries to help him a number of times, or does help him, and he just says, I don't like you.
Yes.
He doesn't value the help at all.
Yeah.
Says he doesn't want to help Puck.
Yeah. So he's also got this kind of a mechanical arm, which is very much like the mechanical arm from Army of Darkness with Bruce Campbell. Let me see if what year did that come out? That was 92. Okay, so it didn't rip off Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness seemingly took the same idea from Berserk. I don't know. Which has a like a crossbow launcher on it, but also he can load it with these like massive like bullets or cannonballs.
Yeah, it's like a little
something.
cannon.
Yeah, which he can fire people. And the other thing is he has a sword, which he carries on his back, but is actually probably about 12 feet long, 10, 12 feet long.
Yeah, it is a big-ass sword.
It's a big sword, which there's no way he's walking around with it on his back, but that's kind of a cheat. It's a comic book cheat where you never see him standing with the sword, like, full length when it's on his back. He's got this weird sigil on his neck. And we learned that he's hunting the apostles, and he's also looking for, he says in Volume 1, he says, where are the 5 members of God Hand? So it seems like, even in Volume 1, God Hand are some sort of people that you can find walking around. So you just walk around enough, you'll find them, which we learn in Volume 2 or Volume 3. There's no way.
3 is when they appear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Volume 3. There's no way you can just find these guys living in some village somewhere.
No. Well, and he has that, what's it called? The egg with the Picasso face on it.
Yeah, the Behelit.
And it's some kind of a key to get to the Godhead, but he doesn't know how to use it.
Well, that is owned by, Vargas has that. So he comes to this town. He
gets it from Vargas.
Vargas has stolen it from the castle of this count or whatever of this city. And apparently if you bleed on it, it opens a portal to another dimension. Or sometimes, I guess, if you just wish really hard enough when you're near it, it seems to open up a portal, as happens later. I don't think it has any blood on it in the certain flashback we see. But anyway, so he seems to be wandering from town to town looking for these so-called apostles. We're not told. There's a lot of stuff that's thrown at us.
Yeah, he sets up a lot of stuff in the first 2.5 volumes.
And it's also like all stuff we've seen elsewhere, essentially. And but I was still there. I was like, it was so confident and, in a sense, shameless. Just like, yeah, I'm going to do this scene from Conan the Barbarian, or I'm going to do this thing or that thing. And, I'm going to steal this stuff from Akira. So, yeah, anyway. So it's not quite clear, and sometimes explanations of things, like at one point he's walking to the next town to kill the next apostle, we guess, and a wagon comes by with a priest on it, and then we get some weird explanation about how if people were killed here, it's a battlefield, they're going to come back to life or whatever, and it's very loosey-goosey about these kind of explanations of things. I don't know if it's a translation or it's just not very clear idea about it.
He says that there are evil spirits after him, and then therefore, because the evil spirits are after him, if they go through this place where there was once a great battle, all the dead bodies are going to come back or something. Well, that's what happens. Yeah,
that is what happens. Yeah, but the explanation of why and stuff is a bit unclear. And then the priest's daughter comes back as a zombie, which is things in this comic were shocking to me. For a while, I was like, oh, I thought that girl was going to be like a character.
Yeah, I didn't expect her to die in the same chapter.
Back, and then he decapitates her or whatever.
Yeah.
Moments later, and it gets more graphic as you go on, because early in Volume 1, when he cuts someone in half, you just see like a spray of black come out of them. But by the end of the volume, you see like the eyeballs falling out of people's heads and like their intestines when he cuts them in half. Before, you never saw intestines. You just see this kind of black splotch.
Well, I don't know. I mean, reading it digitally, I mean, I thought that the art was really nice and detailed, but sometimes I couldn't quite make out what was happening. And I don't know if that's the fault of the art or the fault of the computer screen.
Did you feel that improved, though? I think it was the staging. Because, like... Well,
I mean, it was so gross, I didn't really want to see it anyway. So. It was just, okay, they're fighting. Okay, next page.
I actually think he improved as a cartoonist because, like, the first time we meet Puck the elf, I thought that was a 6-foot-tall character for a couple of pages.
Yeah, it does look like that.
Oh, and then a few pages later when Puck, she is following Guts down the street... Oh, it's this little thing that's the size of, like, a butterfly.
Yeah, it's like Tinkerbell.
Yeah, I was really confused by that. By the way, Puck is a weird... That nakedness is really weird. It was uncomfortable. It's like... if you saw the movie of the musical Cats, with the naked cats running around, and it looked really weird, this looks really weird. Especially because couldn't tell if he was trying to be sexual about it, like... Is it supposed to be a sexualized elf creature, male, female? It's very androgynous.
Well, but, there are no primary sex characteristics on this naked body, so, like, not even nipples, so...
But there's, like, so many butt shots.
Yeah, I mean, from the back, you think female, and the face looks female. But, I mean, if I looked around...
But that doesn't mean anything. Griffith also has a female face. It doesn't... In this comic, it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, I looked around online, and some people... the question is out there, is Puck male or female? And some people say male, and some people say neither.
Yes. I'd say neither, too. But I do think it's a sexualized neither in some weird, perverse way. It's like, ooh, look at this smooth skin.
And I was asking myself, what is Puck doing here? And it seemed like, I mean, Puck is not quite comic relief exactly, but kind of releases the tension or makes it a little more cartoony.
I think it's...
And also as an avatar for the audience. Because I think Puck is asking Guts questions that the audience is probably wondering about.
Yeah, just a sense of conscience that the audience has about it, or... I think it has to be... I mean, imagine if Puck wasn't in the comic. Think how grim it would be without at least somebody saying, hey, don't do this, you shouldn't act like this. I also think practically Puck has healing powers, which maybe help in some seasons. I don't think it matters when Guts is injured because he's still able to fight. Ridiculously, his arm is cut and he's still able to swing his 12-foot sword that weighs 200, 300 pounds.
He swings it with his mouth at one point.
Oh, the mouth slash was like that. So that was the craziest moment. I wrote that one down. His arms are both like messed up, so he grabs a thing in his teeth and runs and slashes the thing, and slashes a demon. Crazy. I think it was like it's a real manga. It's like Fist and Rosar. Like, look at this awesome thing that Guts can do. He's so awesome. He can slash with his mouth.
So then, of course, he eventually runs into people who are even more awesome, and he finally starts to have some competition. Not just dozens of soldiers that he can kill with one blow and be done with.
Yeah.
Coming up, Berserk takes an extended detour to fill us in on Guts' origin story. Does the sudden change work for us?
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm here to help with that.
And we are SP Film Viewers.
Each week, we take a deep dive into films that Sophie is seeing for the first time, some of which are deemed classics, some of which are my favourites, and some are just to try and get a reaction from her.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have a lot of fun talking about what we've watched.
And we hope you have fun listening to our light-hearted thoughts and ramblings on this cinematic journey.
So tune in every Thursday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Old comics can be pretty amusing. Don't you love it? The $sign on the bag.
Yeah.
That means it has money in it. And the early issues of Amazing Spider-Man are no exception.
And there's this line about Mark Twain in here, which has to be the funniest thing Stan Lee ever wrote.
Join me, Tim, along with a rotating cast of Emmett.
Yes, let's Snopes.com this issue of Spider-Man.
Patrick.
Haha, I'm here! Now you must feel my wrath.
And Kumar.
To say you just hit the jackpot about herself is so great.
As we make our way through the transition from Ditko to Ramita, and Peter Parker's transition from being a high school student with a doting aunt,
Aunt May's wearing a Peter, Peter's wearing an Aunt May,
to a college student with his own pad, facing the big questions in life.
Why is Gwen having a party on a Sunday?
Support Deconstructing Comics on Patreon for at least $4 a month and get access to the monthly podcast Spider-Man Transitions.
It just seemed unlikely that, he would go into melee with the Rhino and not get his arm snapped.
Go to patreon.com/deconcomics today. I know, I'll become a costume criminal.
I know.
Sure, that's what clear-thinking people decide.
Yeah, so early on, when he's captured and tortured in Volume 1, and after the torture, he sees this weird monster thing, which I guess is one of the creatures, an incubus, which is one of the spirits, the evil spirits that's following him and causing the dead to rise. Again, it's not super clear, because it shows up again later when he's asleep in the priest's wagon. That incubus thing shows up again. And, so it's somehow these things they're causing all sorts of trouble for Guts. Like, they're making the dead rise this one time. I don't think it happens again. Yeah, so finally he comes to this town. He's befriended, or he's this guy Vargas, who is what was he to the count or the duke of this city? But anyway, he was captured and tortured, and his wife was killed and stuff in front of him. It's getting more and more gruesome as we get further into
and
this.
his kid.
Yeah.
His wife and kid were both eaten by this official who has kind of given up his humanity and gotten these demonic powers.
Yeah, supposedly to get revenge, he claims that these infidels, or what do they call them? They call them blasphemers,
heretics,
pagans, heretics. I went through all of them. These heretics. Yes, he claims these heretics are responsible for the death of his wife. So he he's given up his humanity and become part demon, and he's able to merge partly give his demon self to this knight that he sends after Guts, in a really amazing sequence where he kind of barfs the demon out of himself into the knight, that turns out to be, and he's got a daughter who he's protecting. She's still alive. The Duke or whatever has his daughter.
Yeah, Teresia, kind of an odd name.
Yeah, that's all right. It sounds medieval. I like that. That made more sense to me than this interdimensional being called Griffith. But anyway, or Guts. Teresia made sense.
Yeah, especially Guts.
So he's kind of protecting her, but spoiler, it turns out his wife... Oh, well, before we get to how that's all revealed is, so I think in this fight, some blood gets on the Behelit, which he's trying to get back. It was stolen from his castle by Vargas. And so he sends this knight after Guts, and the knight turns into this big blob creature. And it opens up a portal into another dimension. The dimension is very Escher. It's MC Escher. It's got the upside-down stairs. And then the God Hand shows up. Now, then I realized he wasn't really ripping off MC Escher. He was ripping off Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Oh. Because in Hellraiser, the Cenobites show up, and they're basically the God Hand. The God Hand is the same thing. It's these interdimensional S&M beings that show up. They're all, messed up. One of these, also, the God Hand is not only the Cenobites. They are also all designed by H.R. Giger, because especially the one with the baby face comes straight out of H.R. Giger. He designed that gross baby face. And Miura's just put it onto one of Clive Barker's Cenobites. And they basically, it's the same thing. They come from another dimension, and they're like, we're here to tear your soul apart. And another thing is, in Hellraiser, especially Hellraiser 2, you get to see the dimension of the Cenobites, the Hell dimension. It's not exactly Hell, but it's this dimension of pain. And it's very Escher-esque. It's like got all these chambers in it. And it's very much the same idea here. So these beings come down, but now we learn there's some sort of relationship between Griffith, the leader of them, and seems to be the leader. He seems kind of like the pinhead of the group, and versus Guts. And then they reveal that actually, so this guy is, the Duke he's been chopped down. He's just a face. He's a puddle. He's like a puddle face, a mushy face on the ground is all that's left of him. And I think he can have the chance for immortality with the God Hand, or he can just go into this hell river.
Yeah, but in order
taken away by the souls.
In order to get immortality, he has to make a sacrifice of his daughter.
Yes.
And she would have that same brand on her neck that Guts has, in that case.
Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't do it, and he gets sent to hell, and yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yes. So then they reveal that actually his wife didn't get killed by the heretics. That she actually was...
Yeah, so the Duke's wife. Yeah, not Vargas's wife.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, not Vargas. No, the Duke's wife. So the Duke has been claiming the heretics killed his wife, but actually the God Hand reveals in front of the daughter that actually what happened was she was like... When he was away in battle, she's having these huge orgies and like worshiping Satan.
Yeah.
Or it's actually the Baphomet... That image of the Templar image of Baphomet, which was adopted by the Satanic Temple or the Church of Satan, it's like a kind of a goat being with one hand up and one down to represent balance, and it's got the pentagram, which is like, I think that was from Aristotle or Plato, like said that was like the image of perfect health or whatever. Anyway, so again, it's another thing that Miura is just like, okay, I'm going to take this thing from somewhere else and I'm going to put it in here. It's going to be in there with all this other stuff. By the way, another thing is, in Hellraiser 2, I think it's revealed that the head Cenobite, quote-unquote, Pinhead, was actually a World War I soldier who he was a human being, who had been opened the puzzle box and then ended up getting turned into this Cenobite, and now he was the Hell Priest, the head priest. And this is basically what's revealed with Griffith, because then we get a flashback and we see Griffith on a battlefield with Guts in the past. I'm like, okay, so we borrowed that from Hellraiser 2. Fine, all this stuff. But I was still there. I was really enjoying it. Somehow it was all really grabbing me. It was so confident and well paced, so beautifully drawn, and yeah, it had me the whole way. And then we jump to this initially strange flashback, which I don't know. Did you feel?
Well, yeah, I mean the origin of Guts.
Yeah, the origin of Guts. And at first, it's like this really amazingly shocking horror movie scene where you see all these dead bodies hanging from a tree. This is 30 years ago or whatever.
Various points of decomposition.
Yes, and under one of them, you see a baby with the umbilical cord still sticking out of its navel, and above it, the baby's alive and crying, but above it is a corpse with the other end of the umbilical cord hanging down. So he's actually been born out of this corpse, and then the cord is snapped, and he's fallen to the ground, and he gets rescued by this passing army.
Was that stolen from anything?
My God, I don't know. It was the most shocking. I don't think so. Not that I know of. I've never seen anything. That moment actually to me was like maybe the best, because it was like the most creative. Like, whoa, I've never thought of this one before. Like being born after it's dead, and then from a corpse hanging from a tree. Like, wow, that is something else. Real shocker of a moment. But like a perfect, like the grimmest origin you could think of for this guy. Like I couldn't think of anything worse, really. It's not like a baby being put in a basket and being floated down the river. This is something else entirely, the way he gets found. But like, what did you make of this is a huge shift in tone.
Yeah, I mean, Puck is gone, so we don't... Especially by
Volume 4, and there's no Puck, that's right.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of cartoony element to it, or the Avatar, but... And
we had really serious, like, there's no gore, like, cartoonish gore about these 2 volumes, 3 and 4. It's really pretty serious, very grim, like I said, dark. Guts is... spoiler, if you've never read it, Guts is raped in... the end of Volume 3, beginning of Volume 4. He's sold, basically. Yeah,
as a little kid.
The man he's trusted, as a 9-year-old, he's trusted this man who's been raising him, because the man that found him, and that man sells him for 3 coins to this other man in the army on the night before he goes into his first battle.
I think it wasn't right after the first battle, wasn't it?
I can't remember, because later he says it was before. Later... Gambino says, I sold you before your... Maybe you're right. Anyway, still, it was... Yeah, it does seem like it was after, doesn't it? But
yeah, I thought it was stated that it was after. But yeah, so I read the first 4 volumes, and then I read them again, and then I read 5 and 6, and I could see that... I mean, on Law of Equivalent Exchange, an early episode, we talked about graphic medicine, comics about... health issues, and I thought, this is actually kind of a graphic medicine comic about trauma.
Yeah, right.
Certainly for Guts, and when you know what happens to him in 3 and last part of 3 and 4, and then you go back and read it again, his attitude makes a lot more sense. And talking about how he doesn't like weaklings, he doesn't like people who can't defend themselves, and that's why he doesn't like Puck. But then. He doesn't like people who are... He doesn't seem to like people who are mean to weak people also. So he doesn't really like anybody. But it's not just that, he can't trust anybody.
Yes, absolutely. Especially because of the Gambino sold him, and he's trusting him. And even after that happened, the guy who rapes him says, I paid Gambino for you for the night. And he doesn't believe it. For a long time, he doesn't believe it. Maybe until the next flashback, like, is it 3 years or something? But
yeah, I think it is. Because at the time, the next morning, Gambino doesn't seem to know what happened. Or he doesn't care what happened. He interprets it as he doesn't know what happened. And so, Guts thinks, maybe he doesn't know. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe the other guy was lying. And then, later on, 3 years or 5 years or whatever, then Gambino outright tells him.
Yes.
So, if that had happened to me, I think I wouldn't trust anybody either.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and wouldn't want anyone to touch you or whatever or anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, to me, it was a different comic. It became a completely different comic.
Yes.
Another comic which I still really was enjoying very much. And the art just got better and better, more detailed, turned into like Jeff Darrow level of every little brick, every crumbling stone was drawn. But it was like the first 2 volumes are such a goofball, dark fantasy. Like, so the violence is so ridiculous. Where now we get an act of violence, which is the most serious. That it really sticks with you and sticks with him. He's having nightmares about it. Years later, he's still having nightmares about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to interpret whether you felt like that was a flaw or...
Well, I thought it was, both stories were interesting, the present and the past, but the length of the past story is a little, I don't know, awkward or disorienting. Right. It's almost like that should have been a separate comic.
I think, what I think has happened is often if you're trying to sell a manga, or I'll tell you what, like, The Walking Dead. So when Kirkman sold The Walking Dead to Image, he said, it was caused by aliens. Aliens are causing the zombies to show up, and then it's causing dead to rise from the graves. and the aliens will show up later. But that was a lie, which he has said to get Image to publish the comic. There was never going to be any aliens in it. And I feel like here, Miura's like, okay, I want to draw this medieval war story, but I got to sell it to a manga magazine. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I'm going to put all these demons in the first 2 volumes and make it seem like it's a fantasy comic to sell it. And then I can tell the story that I really want to tell.
Yeah, it could have been a strategy like that.
From volume 2 to 14. But how many volumes are there? I think there were 40 before he died or something.
So the last published volume is 41. The final chapter is number 364, which is at the end of that volume. Then Kouji Mori has done at least 7 more chapters that haven't been published in a collected volume so far.
Okay, drawn by his Miura's studio, I guess
so, yeah. His
studio assistants.
Mori and the Assistants, yeah. That's a band name, Morty and the Assistants. But anyway. So yeah, there are 41 volumes, and we haven't read just a small percentage of them.
So it's 14 of flashbacks. So maybe it's not fair to say that what he really wants to draw is the flashback stuff, because maybe there's still 25 volumes of, I guess, demon slaying happening.
Well, he could have told the story chronologically. But that
wouldn't have sold. That wouldn't have sold the comic.
Yeah, you need to have those first 2.5 volumes to kind of pique the reader's interest in what's all this and what was all in his past, and then
and you need to get to the meeting with Griffith. You need to establish that there's some sort of past with Griffith. Mm-hmm. I think before we get to all that flashback stuff, because my second thought was, okay, have sex with the demon woman and then do the flashback stuff and do rest, and then it's like, no, that doesn't add up, because you don't get to see him pushing people's arms away when they try to touch him, or the thing with Griffith, because we're fascinated by Griffith too, because we're like, wait a second, how's Griffith going to turn into this thing? Not only because Griffith is he's not an apostle, he's one of the 5 God Hand. There's only 5 of them, so somehow Griffith is going to go through some thing to, fascinating. But what's in? So is 5 and 6 is? Do we stop getting leaps in years? Is it just like straight through?
I think there was one jump in there of a couple years or something, but So after he. There are a lot of traveling bands of mercenaries in this world.
Yes,
are there any other jobs besides mercenary? So because he's with the one group that's led by Gambino, and then he ends up with a different mercenary group, and eventually then he's.
It was actually fascinating to me, actually, because I kind of, when he ended up with the Gambino's group, I thought it was going to be Gambino's group forever, kind of. And then I was really kind of surprised. There's an amazing scene where he's, I think it's after Gambino reveals himself to him, reveals what he did. So Gambino's had his leg cut off, so he's become extremely bitter because he can't go into battle anymore. Mm-hmm. And his whole thing is he's nothing but war, this guy. So they have a big fight, and he kills Gambino, as I recall, and then he falls down this cliff face, and he's like...
He kills several other members of the group, too, and then they're chasing him on the horse, and he falls off the horse and off a cliff.
And he's, like, ready to die. He's like...
Yeah.
This is actually, to me, also was an amazing moment in this comic. He's like, why don't I just die? I'm done. What's the point of living anymore? And then this wolf pack finds him, and the wolves are going to attack, and he looks at them with a smile like, I'm just going to let them kill me. And the wolf attacks, and he raises a sword and he kills one. And then he has a look on his face like he's surprised, like he didn't consciously lift his arm to kill this wolf. His body just responds, and his body kills all these wolves. He's not even thinking; it just happens without him. He's not able to die. Like he can't. He's got this built-in survival instinct, which is purely unconscious. Which it really was a sad moment. Like. When you realize what's become of him, I think he's 12 or 15 years old at this point. And then he's picked up by the next mercenary band, who are called was it Eagle or Hawk something?
So the Band of the Hawk. That's the group led by Griffith.
Yeah, yeah.
He's still in that group for volumes 5 and 6, and it sounds like, from what I glanced at Wikipedia, he's with that group up to volume 14.
Okay.
Because that's really kind of the heart of the story of, aside from the rape, that his time with the Band of the Hawk is, the most important maybe part of the flashback.
Right. Yeah, if we'd had more time, I really wanted to keep reading. Actually,
Yeah. Well, I was telling Kumar before we started recording, I spent like all day yesterday pretty much reading this comic, volumes 1 through 6.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would have liked to read more, but
yeah, I read one a day in preparation for the recording, and was riveted, and really wanted to know how it was going to play out, and was fascinated by the shift in tone, and was wondering was there going to be more shifts was there going to be something different as well further down the line, or
yeah, I really wanted to know what the deal was with him and Griffith, and when are we going to get back to the present day with him and Puck. That was kind of what kept me going. Like, no, still not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess there's a kind of evolution of Griffith's character that he's carrying out, kind of slow. It's a gradual thing. And, he has to give it the time that it deserves. So it takes a lot of volumes. Right,
yes. And that's the thing about, many manga series is they have the space to pace things out at the speed they need to go at.
Yeah, especially if the editor is saying, don't end it, keep going, we're making money.
Well, I think that's Dragon Ball territory for sure, Dragon Ball Z territory, where they were like, well, no, he's an alien, and we got to drag this out. I'm not sure. And how old was Miura when he died? I feel like he wasn't that...
In his 50s.
Okay.
Like early 50s, I think it was, what I saw on Wikipedia.
Okay. What a shock.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing I wanted to mention that I really enjoyed was the violence is sometimes, I don't know if the word is realistic, but in Volume 1, Guts ends up fighting this guy who's using a warhammer, and when the guy swings the warhammer, it accidentally hits his own men as it's going past, or like when he's swinging it back, it'll like hit somebody and bash their face in as he's, about to swing forward at Guts. And I just love the kind of craziness of it, that it was like he was considering, like, there's going to be like friendly fire, so to speak, where collateral damage, or your own guys are going to get hit because you're swinging around this ridiculous giant warhammer.
But it's just like, oh well. That's normal.
Yes, everything's well in this comic, especially the first volume. It's like, just cut this guy in half. This guy's head comes off. Well, and I love when he cuts off that half of that guy's face, and then the half demon face comes out of it, like grows out of that where he chopped it off. There's some wild stuff in here, and I feel like I've seen it, but I've not seen it all in one place.
So it's kind of an amalgamation of many horror movies.
Many things all put together and then put into Fist of the North Star, essentially. And he's going to wander from town to town doing all this stuff. And I did feel like, especially because of that birth sequence and the flashback stuff, I felt like Miura was aping stuff he'd seen before, but he was going to... I feel like he was capable, and I felt like he was developing as an artist, as a writer and a draftsman in the 4 volumes that we read. And I just felt like he was going to get better and better, and that the ideas, he's going to be less dependent on other people's ideas in the later volumes. And I certainly felt that way with volumes 3 and 4. I didn't feel, I wasn't having all those deja vu moments like I did in 1 and 2.
Well, I mean, I can't say for sure, because you know of a lot of movies and stuff that I haven't seen, but certainly reading 3, 4, 5, 6, there's not much there that could have been taken from horror movies, because it's not that kind of thing at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there are some bloody battles, but a lot of it is this interpersonal drama.
Yeah. Well, there's even even in the bloody battles, like even at the end of Volume 4, there was a certain, like right near the end, there was this page where you see an enemy. They pincer the enemy and they attack them from behind, and you see one of them running away. And although everything is drawn in super detail, he's got a really cartoony run where like one leg's like all the way up and one arm's all the way up and one's all the way back, like a really like a Looney Tunes character. Yeah, so I don't know. There's all sorts of interesting stuff going on in here.
Yeah,
on all sorts of levels.
In 5 and 6, there are a few kind of humor moments, which I wasn't sure what to do with them. Like, what's this doing here? Actually, I saw, what was it, on the Amazon page of all of the Berserk books, I think it said that it was a humorous comic, like a funny comic. Like, what? I mean, even Puck is not really funny, just cartoony.
No. Yeah, well, he gets... yeah, is he funny? I guess he gets like flicked away and stuff, and he's like, "Hey, don't do that." And I guess we're supposed to see that as humorous, maybe. But the other thing is, and the other thing about the ideas being reused from other places is, I imagine any manga reader, they might not be that familiar with that stuff, especially in 1990. Might not have. Well, I don't know, Akira, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It would have looked pretty new. I think it's quite easy to see why it's lasted for 40 volumes. It's compelling as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But what was your... Were you have kind of you're curious about it, or did you enjoy it? Now, I know you're not a gore or horror fan.
No, but yeah, like I said, wanting to know what the backstory was and when they're going to get back to the present was, pushing me forward, and I'd like to read more of it.
Okay. I did love it.
Berserk by Kentaro Miura is published by Dark Horse. Check the show notes for the link to the gag article about Bill Watterson supposedly finishing Berserk, and a page looking into Al Plastino's unpublished Peanuts strips. If you've enjoyed this week's show or any other Deconstructing Comics episodes, tell your friends. Share your favorite episodes on your social media. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube by clicking our social media buttons at deconstructingcomics.com. You can help the Deconstructing Comics family of podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. And go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and we'll critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Recently, the 27-minute animated presentation of Tracy Butler's webcomic Lackadaisy has been something of a sensation online. Tracy was on this podcast way back in episode 200 in 2009, and when I heard about the short and watched it, I just had to invite her back. She'll be here next week to talk about how the film came about and what it might lead to, quitting her day job, her comic switch from sepia to color, and more. Don't miss my interview with Tracy Butler next week, and in the meantime, be sure to watch the Lackadaisy pilot on YouTube. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.